And now, for the week of January 16th, Photoshop TV is on the air.
Welcome to Photoshop TV from the National Association of Photoshop Professionals. And here's your hosts, the Photoshop guys, Scott Kelby, Dave Cross, and Matt Kloskowski.
All right, welcome to another flippant episode of Photoshop TV, produced by the National Association of Photoshop Professionals, or what we call just NAP. This week's episode is sponsored by
Wacom, makers of the Intuos and Graphire line of tablets. Check them out at wacom.com.
Also, iStock Photo, the fastest growing royalty-free collection in the world. You can find out more at iStockPhoto.com.
Yeah, they just launched their brand new site,
yes.
So go check it out. They had a
Definitely.
new launch.
Last week.
Better, faster, cooler, bigger, more gooder.
Everythinger.
And don't forget our new sponsor just joined us last week, Epson,
Yes.
and the Epson Print Academy. So go check them out at EpsonPrintAcademy.com. They've got a brand new tour going around the country. And last week they gave us an incredible prize to give away, which was that Epson printer. So we'll be having more Epson printers in future episodes. Right. But first, welcome everyone. My name is Scott Kelby. We're here with the Photoshop guys. Also joining me on the set, as always, rocking the house-key, Mr. Matt Kloskowski.
Welcome back, everybody.
And of course, once again, wearing the Canada colors, Mr. Dave Cross.
Good day, A.
So welcome.
Thanks, Dave.
We have got a very, very neat show put together for you. You've got a lot of neat stuff. I know Dave brought some stuff, Matt brought some stuff. I've got some stuff. What kind of stuff did you bring, Dave?
I have stuff. I have two tips. They're actually kind of separate tips, but they're both different ways to take advantage of Vanishing Point.
Fantastic.
I've got a multi-part tutorial on using the pen tool and paths and how to do some pretty
Multi
cool...
meaning more than two.
More than two.
More than one. Two, maybe three, maybe four, who knows.
Excellent. Multi-part tips are good.
We've also got some Q&As for later on in the show, and we will address the new Mac product with the Mac.
Yes, the new replacement for the PowerBook.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, there's some important stuff that Photoshop users need to know about that. We'll be talking about that in the news. I brought a couple of things. I've got actually two tutorials today. My first tutorial will be on, well, it actually came from our blog, from PhotoshopTV.com, where someone asked how to do a matte technique. Not one of Matt's techniques, but a matting technique. So we're going to build a frame and do just a multi-beveled matte. And then I'm going to show you how to get a kind of a displacement map effect without using a displacement map filter. Ooh. So it's kind of a little trick on that. And let's see what else. We've got our contests, of course. We got giveaways. We've got trivia. We've got all the stuff back this week. Of course, last week we focused on Adobe's Lightroom product. And if you didn't get a chance to check it out, go to photoshopuser.com and you'll find a link where we put together, the three of us and our crew here, put together a Lightroom resource center. So if you're a professional photographer and you're on the Macintosh platform, because only the Mac version's out yet, go to photoshopuser.com. Click on that resource. Let's talk about our giveaways. We have an unexpected giveaway. You know, a lot of people didn't realize, we kind of went by this quickly last week, but Adobe creates something a lot of people don't know about. It's the Adobe Cooler, and inside it you can keep things cool. It's, well, this is beer, but you don't get beer, but what you do get are two things. Number one, you get software. You get the cooler, of course, and some software. Matt will tell you about the software now.
I will. This is the Photoshop plugin suite from On1 Software, and inside it, it's got Genuine Fractals, Photo Frame, Mask Pro, and IntelliHense Pro. Here's the thing, though. It's got 4 products in here. This is actually $399.
Nice.
Back in the box.
You get it in the cooler.
You also get, and it doesn't matter where you live in the world, you also get a NAPP membership, which includes your subscription to Photoshop User Magazine, the only magazine in the world where each issue you can read Dave Cross, Matt Kloskowski, myself, Skowski, and all the other Skowskis in the magazine. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world. We have people watching from all over the world.
Right,
so.
and if you are already a NAP member, we'll just add a year on to your membership. So whether you're a new member or an existing one, you still win.
Yep, there we go. All right, first thing we're going to do is kick things off with a tip. This week, Matt's going to kick things off first. So Matt, what are you doing first?
I've got a tip on using the pen tool. What we're going to do is take a reference photo and trace it, and you'll see we're going to actually create this image, and you're going to do it all with paths inside of Photoshop.
It's part one, right?
Part one right now.
All right, let's get to it.
I move the beer for you.
Okay, thank you. You can leave it here if you want. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. In part one, we're going to start pretty much just laying the basic framework of what we're going to do here with our paths. So you can see this is the final image. This is the photo that's right under, and that's the key here is you don't need to know how to draw these things inside of Photoshop. If you don't know how to, you can always just use a reference photo to go by. So that's what I'm doing here. Right now I'm going to go over to the paths palette.
So you're cheating, you're tracing.
I'm cheating, yes. It's called a
really
reference
drawing.
photo.
A reference photo, that's
reference
a great
photo,
name for
that's
it.
yes. Okay, so I'm going to go over to the paths palette. We don't need anything with layers yet. I'm going to select the pen tool, and up here in the options bar, you want to click the second option, paths, because that's all we want to create right now is a path. Now you can see here, here's the paths I created before. That's how I made the image. So let's just go down and we'll create a brand new layer here, new path layer. And also make sure you choose the leftmost button for creating a path because you don't want it to intersect with anything. And then you just take your pen tool and you start drawing. And I know that sounds simple. The pen tool can be kind of tricky, but the best way to do it...
But not for Matt.
Honestly, the best way I learned how to use the pen tool was just, this one literally is practice. It's like everything else, but just trace things. Take an object a day and just trace it. An object a day will help you become better.
Matt says an object a day.
But it really will, so disregard the guys behind me that are ridiculing and mocking me and trace.
Now, it is worth mentioning, though, Matt, that don't worry about getting it just right because you can tweak those paths.
Yeah, you can
right?
always
you can
tweak
always
a path.
adjust them if you need to.
Yeah, they save with your Photoshop file. So as I'm going through here, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it because I just kind of want to show you what you can do with the paths here. But we'll just kind of go through and trace this part of the hand. And there we go. So we've got one part of the hand, and notice it's on its own path layer here. So we're going to come back in part 2, and I'm going to show you how you can add to the same part without actually having to recreate more and more layers too. Remember, though, as Dave said, you can always go back in there and tweak your paths later if you need to.
Right, and it's very easy to do that because you can just grab a pointer and move points around. It's actually a lot easier than using some of the other selection tools. So we will see that in his other 2 parts.
I hope so.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. Now, I have a tip for you that I will be showing you any moment now, which is on how we can take advantage of this wonderful filter that was introduced in CS2 called Vanishing Point. So let's take a look, shall we?
We shall.
All right. All right, now one of the huge ways we use Vanishing Point, it just would have been so difficult before, is when we want to do things like this. I have this logo, and I want it to look like it's on the side of the truck. And it'd be very difficult to do that without this filter. So what we're going to do is grab this information, just select it, and copy it, and I'm going to hide that. I don't really want that original. It's always a good idea whenever using Vanishing Point, whatever work you're going to do, put it on a new layer or a duplicated layer if that's appropriate, just so you don't end up having to, if you really mess up, you have somewhere to go back to. So let's go to Vanishing Point, and the first thing we have to do is we have to tell this filter where we want to work. So we're going to create a little plane, and all you do is click. You don't have to drag. It'll automatically fix a point wherever you click the mouse. And as you're drawing it, it's good to see blue. If you see other colors, yellow means not that great, red means don't do it, start over again.
Grid's not going to work.
Grid is just, that's a bad grid. So blue is almost like saying blue for go. I don't know. Green for go. Anyway, all right. So now we paste that information.
That out, right?
We paste it. Yeah, didn't make any sense, but just don't get yellow or red. Okay, so here's my logo. Now I'm going to drag it in to here. Now it, for some reason, came in really, really big, but let's see if we can.
I like it that way, though.
Yeah, it looks so realistic,
I like
doesn't
it?
it?
Floats over the truck.
So let's just see if we can't shrink it to a more reasonable size. Something like that. Now, obviously, you could tweak this a lot better than this, and I'm going on a pretty low resolution version, but you see, even there, not too bad, looking like it could have been painted on there. Luckily, I have a couple that were done ahead of time that look a lot, no, not that one. This one shows you, even see right there on the box how even that one is made to fit. So that's kind of the typical use of Vanishing Point. So with a bit of effort, you can take just about anything and make it fit exactly the angle you want using Vanishing Point. Now, if you look under your filter menu, you don't see Vanishing Point. That's because you don't have CS2.
You don't have CS2.
Because it is introduced in CS2. So later on, I'll be doing a second tip on Vanishing Point. Even for people who've used it before, I'll show you a way to use it you might not have thought of. So we'll see that later on. But now, Scott, I believe you have something to share with us.
Thank you, Dave. And in fact, I do. I brought a tip that was inspired by a tip on the blog. And basically, they wanted to see how to do a matting effect. So here's how you do a matting effect using Photoshop. All right, the first step is to get your image off the background layer and onto its own layer. So I'm going to do select all, and then I'm going to cut it off that background layer and put it up on its own layer by pressing Shift-Command-J on the Mac or Shift-Control-J on a PC. Now, obviously, to be able to put a mat in here, we need some space around it. So I'm going to go under the Image menu to Canvas Size. This is where we add space. I'm going to add some blank space here. How about like 3 inches on each side? How about 3 to the height, 3 to the width? Let's see how big it is. Why, it's huge, but that's okay. Now, here's what we need to do. We need to add a layer beneath the layer we're on. There's a keyboard shortcut for that. Hold the Command key on Mac or the Control key on PC, then click the new layer icon right there, and you'll see the layer appears underneath. This is where you're going to draw where your frame goes, okay? So let's go ahead and we'll draw quite a large frame here, something like that. There's our frame. Now, you need to fill this frame with white, so make white your foreground color and fill that with white. I'm going to press Option-Delete on a Mac or Alt-Backspace on a PC to fill that layer with white. It's hard to see because it's a white box on a white background.
White on white.
Right.
Very
so
nice.
we're going to go choose a layer style. The layer style we're going to choose is Stroke. And it brings up the Layer Style dialog box right here. We're going to change first the color from red to black so it looks more like a frame. Then we're going to increase the size to about 7, so let's increase that up there to 7. And I'm going to move the position from outside to inside. You know why? Because those corners look rounded, but if you make it inside, like that, then it goes nice and straight. I'm going to add 2 more things while I'm here just for fun. I'm going to add a drop shadow. Why? Because I can. Then I'm going to go add an inner shadow. And that's just to make it look like there's actually a little bit of depth here. Let me pull this like that. There you go. See how I pull the shadow inside there? And I'm going to lower the opacity a little bit. So there's the frame, but that's not the matting part. Here comes the matting part, which is actually somewhat more fun. We're going to add another layer. We're going to draw where we want our outer mat to be. Now, he wanted a multiple mat effect, he said, so we'll do 2 mats. So here's our first mat on the inside. We're going to fill it with white. Okay, same kind of thing. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go choose a different layer style this time. We're going to go choose, well, we wouldn't choose them from the adjustment layer menu, Dave. Now, would we?
But it wouldn't work
we
quite
could,
as well.
But it would work better if you chose it over the, here we go. We're going to choose an Inner Glow right there, Inner Glow. And it's going to bring up this little dialog box. We need our Inner Glow to be black. So we'll choose black as our color. We need this blend mode to be normal so we can actually see it. All right, and then here's the trick, is basically to lower the opacity so low that it looks like just a little bit of a beveled mat, something like that. Now I will hit OK, and we'll draw one more. That remember the extra mat he wanted? So now we'll go in tight on the photo like this, and just drop that in there. We'll fill this with white, and now it's easy. You're going to hold the Option key on Mac, the Alt key on PC, and as long as you have CS2 to get that same effect, all you do is Option, drag it, and it copies it right to there. So now you can see you have, I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see we have the double matte effect right there. Now lastly, if you really wanted to finish this off right, and I know that you do, go grab your paintbrush. Remember a couple of episodes ago here on Photoshop TV, I showed you how to turn your signature into a brush? Well, I have not done that. I thought I had it done. Let's see if it's in my recent memory. No. Here's what you do. Go back to that episode. This is so well done. Go back to that episode and learn how to put your signature.
We've shown it to you twice already, so you should remember
right.
by
Dave
now.
showed it like in episode 2. I showed it like episode 6 or 7. So it would really be redundant.
It would at this point.
So there's my tightly scripted, carefully planned tutorial.
It was.
Yes, well, you know, it's like Dave Cross said earlier, you know. We've shown it to you twice. If you don't know it by now, you don't deserve to know the signature trick. Okay, we took significant heat by accidentally showing that one twice. So now we're throwing the heat. We're repelling the heat and sending it back. Okay, now it's time to turn things over to Matt Kloskowski, who's rocking the house key. But before you do that, I have to tell you, for those of you who don't know, you know, we make this rocking the house key joke, and it has apparently become a college drinking game. So last week we had beers on the set. I would mention rocking the house key, would take a drink, and so we did that for the one episode, but now we're totally sober, and I just want to let you know that the beers that we had on the set last week were never opened.
Never.
Not a single brain cell was harmed, but of course later.
Yeah, they weren't open on the set.
But not on the set. You know, I think Tammy had some, but I think outside of that, not much on the set at all.
Camera was
all right,
wobbly.
and now it's time to rock the house key with Mr. Matt Kloskowski.
Yes. Well, as Scott mentioned, we are going to pick up where we left off in our pen and path tutorial. So I've got my path that I started drawing around the left side of the hand, and what we're going to do is we want to continue this path. Notice I didn't close it. If I take my pen tool and I hold it over that bottom point, you can see that little small circle next to it. That means I can close a path. I don't want to do that here. I want to start creating a new path. So I'm just going to press the Enter key, and that kind of just commits the path here, and you can see we still have it here. So I'm going to click on that path layer, and now I'm going to start drawing the other part of the hand on the same path layer. And I'm doing that because it's going to make it so much easier later when we want to actually stroke this path. So it's going to make it a lot easier because we're not going to have to do it onto multiple path layers. So let's just take the pen tool, and we'll just continue drawing along part of the hand here and trace as I am.
Do as Matt does.
Let's trace the right way.
He's evolving.
There's nothing worse than tracing and not making it look good. So,
no, this looks great.
And then we'll just maneuver the path around the hand. And what I'm doing here, I'm just tracing the main details, just any small lines that help it look like more of the hand that's behind there. Now, I've got the hand done. What I'm going to do here is actually create a new path layer. Now, I want to do this separate. I want to put the phone onto a separate path layer. It's just going to make it easier later. So we'll start a whole new path layer, and we'll trace the phone. I'm not going to go through the whole thing here. You trace the phone, and I'll show you one trick here. You don't have to trace everything with the pen tool. You can always just use some of your shape tools. Don't forget to set them to the paths option here, but you can do it on the same layer, and you can draw those buttons just with the shape tools here. So it makes it a lot easier not tracing everything. So there's part 2 of the pen and paths tutorial.
The extravaganza.
The extravaganza.
All right, thanks, Matt. We're going to turn things over to Matt in just a minute for the news, but before we do, Matt mentioned earlier somebody sent in a message from the blog. It was actually Francois from Ireland, I believe, that sent it in. And what Francois... Wait a minute, Francois from Ireland. Doesn't make sense. Okay, but he posted, basically the question was, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, that the question was, will Apple's new Power Mac, what is it called? The MacBook Pro?
Yes.
Right.
That was just released by Apple. How will it run Photoshop? Will they have to recompile Photoshop for that? Well, here's the thing. Before you go run out and order your new, your
MacBook Pro.
MacBook Pro, that's it, that thing. There is some things you need to know about it. Number one is it's supposed to run 4 times faster than the old PowerBook. However, at this point, it will not run Photoshop 4 times faster. It has to run Photoshop in an emulation mode until Adobe recompiles it. Now, I got to be honest with you, looking back at the history of the way Adobe has updated things like this, it is, in my opinion, very unlikely that you're going to see that updated until the next version of Photoshop, which would be CS3, and I'm guessing that's what it's going to be called. And I think that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. So, you can still run Photoshop on those. You have to run them in emulation mode, and as Steve Jobs himself said, it's probably not fast enough for pros running in that emulation mode. It's fine, for consumers who run Photoshop. But if you're a pro, and I know you are, for us, we're going to have to kind of sit still probably to get that speed increase until that point. So now we're going to turn things over to Matt Kloskowski as he rocks the house key with the latest in the Photoshop and digital imaging news. Matt?
All right, my Photoshop news hungry friends. First up, this week, the folks over at Pro Shooters have announced Digital Pro 4 for Windows. Now what this is, it's a management and workflow app that's basically designed to handle downloading, organizing, reviewing, cataloging, all that fun stuff for your digital images. So you can find out more at proshooters.com. Also, NAT member Mark Johnson sent us a really cool website called Radiant Vista. Now what this is, it's a community with news, podcasts, and Photoshop tutorials, but it's got a really cool feature. It's called the Daily Critique, and it's basically a QuickTime movie where Mark is one of the people that does the reviewing, but there's other people as well, and they critique your photos. They touch on some good points, some bad points of a photo, and they even give some ideas on how you can fix it in Photoshop. So check it out at radiantvista.com. Also, if you're a Wacom user, Wacom has released a driver update for their tablets, so you want to go download it from Wacom's website. We'll also put a link to it on the photoshoptv.com website. And last but not least, a few weeks ago, probably a month ago on Photoshop TV, I announced a product called Film Loop. And it was only for Windows at the time. Well, now they've released a Mac version, so you can go check it out at filmloop.com. Now that's it for the news this week. Back to you guys.
All right, thanks, Matt. Hey, I just also want to mention before we get on to Dave's trivia that Photoshop World is coming up. I want to invite all of our viewers to come and check us out at Photoshop World. I'll be teaching sessions, of course. Dave will be teaching there. Matt will be teaching at Photoshop World as well.
many other people, and we'll be doing a live broadcast of Photoshop TV right from Miami.
Right. If you've never been to Photoshop World, basically it's a 3-day Photoshop Love Fest where Photoshop people from all over the world, all over the United States and all over the world, come together for 3 days of intense training from the best Photoshop instructors in the world. I mean, everybody's there, from Ben Wilmore to Deke McClellan to, the photographers. Can I say real quick?
Sure.
Just let me tell you about the photographers, because this year we've got the best lineup of photography instructors ever. People like, ready? Jay Maisel, Joyce Tennyson, Vincent Versace, you've got Moose Peterson, Jim DiVitale, you've got everybody, Rip Salmon. If you can name a hot photographer that does Photoshop, they are going to be there. So we invite you to join us down there. It's in Miami, March 22nd through 24th. And we're going to be giving away tickets starting next week, every show from now till Photoshop World in March. We're going to be giving away 1 ticket to go to Photoshop World. For more information, go to photoshopworld.com. And there was something else I wanted to mention.
About the flights, that a lot of people think it might be too expensive to go. But there is, we've been searching, and you can get flights that aren't really that expensive.
For example, you can fly from Philly right now. If you go to Expedia.com, look up, American Airlines has a direct flight, Philly to Miami, $174, something like that. $174 round trip. So come on down to Miami. It's South Beach. We're going to have a blast. There's going to be lots of Photoshop, and there will absolutely be no nightclubbing, no beers, and no fun whatsoever. It'll just be
strictly learning.
Work all the time. All right, now it's time for Dave Cross's. That's why Dave's not going to be there. Time for Dave Cross's trivia. So, Dave, what's this week's trivia question? This isn't a contest.
This is not a contest. This is just the trivia for your own mild amusement, if that. And the question is this. In the very first version of Photoshop, before it was even Adobe Photoshop, what did they use as the application icon when you looked at it on your computer?
Before it was Photoshop?
Before it was Adobe Photoshop, the very original version when it was first developed, what was the application icon? We'll have the answer to that question right after this brief message.
Are you a creative professional? If you are, you can't afford to miss a single issue of Layers magazine, the how-to magazine for everything Adobe. Layers gives you amazing tutorials, tips, and tricks that help you master Photoshop, InDesign, Flash, and the entire creative suite. We also give you enough creative inspiration to turn your next project into a masterpiece. Available on newsstands nationwide, and visit us online at layersmagazine.com. Save over 50% off the cover price when you subscribe online.
All right, so the question is, the very first version of Photoshop, what icon did they use as the application icon on your computer? And the answer was a little photo hut that looked kind of like this, that we will show you. That was it. That was the very original application icon.
Pizza Hut.
No. Well, you would think, but no, it was a little photo hut. And just as an aside, anytime you saved a document, it looked like a little roll of film.
I remember
they kind of had that.
Yeah, they kept that for a while, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. So that's it for this week's trivia. And now, Scott, you are going to favor us with another tip, I do believe.
Why, thank you, Dave, for that very formal introduction. All right, this is the tip I mentioned earlier in the show, where I told you we'd come up with a way to fake a displacement map without using a displacement map. Believe it or not, it uses Liquify, and here's how it's done. All right, this year, I'm sad to say, I created a really cheesy Christmas graphic. And because my friends kind of expect that. Friends and family expect that I'm going to send some Photoshop-related thing. So I basically put the Photoshop box in Santa's hands, but that's not the trick. The trick is down here where I basically mapped the NAPP logo onto Santa's bag. So normally you would do something like that with a displacement map, but displacement maps scare people and small children.
That's right.
So I did this using a technique that just takes a few seconds. So I'm going to show you the original image here. There's the original image right there. And we're going to open up the NAPP logo. So we'll just grab the NAP logo and just drag it onto your image. Okay, so here it is right here. It's a little large, so let me scale it down. Now, something like that. Here is the trick. Go ahead and render that. Now, just so we can see what we're doing a little better, I'm going to put a selection around the area so it kind of zooms in right there. Put a selection around before you go and choose Liquify. And it brings up the world's largest dialog box, the giant Liquify dialog box. At the very bottom, if you need to see the background, you can choose Show Backdrop. But see my cursor? Watch, it's going off the screen. Woo! There's how you can see the bag behind it. But here's all you're going to do, basically. You're going to grab the smudge tool up here, and you're just going to go in here and randomly make a couple of little smudges. Here's one, maybe over here, over there, maybe over there, like that. Now, if you really want to make it try to line up, you can do the Show Backdrop thing. But honestly, this usually works pretty well just by faking it. That's why I'm saying this is like really cheating, because you're not really taking the time to line it up. I'm going to click OK, and look at that. It just warps the thing right onto the bag. Then it probably should be in white, so it matches the original version that I did. There I filled it with white. And then you can either change the blend mode, something that might make it fit, not overlay. I did that for Matt. How about just lowering the opacity, which is what I think I actually did. There we go, something like, So then it just fits right on the bag and it looks like it was really there. So it's faking the displacement map effect using a little old liquefy trick. Perfect for people with a fear of displacement maps, and you know who they are.
I didn't get one of those Christmas cards either, you know.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
He said friends and family.
Friends, close friends like Matt Klaskowski. I sent the email, of course, to rockinthehouski.com.
Oh, that could be why I didn't get it.
So, you got a tip? Oh, you got the third tip.
I have, yes, the epic
evolution.
The evolution of the pen tool and path. So we left off where we had just finished actually drawing the phone and the hand, or at least part of the phone. And what I've done here is I've actually gone in and drawn the entire thing. And I took a little more time doing it because I didn't have a whole lot of time here. So what we'll do, I'm going to show you a little trick before we finish it up. Go and select the path selection tool from the toolbox. And notice how I said to draw that phone onto its own path layer. I didn't do that here. Well, if you realize you didn't do it, just go select it, click once, Control or Command X, cuts it, and then go to a different path layer and then just paste it in there. And it takes it off of the original path layer. Now, I'll show you trick number 2, and that is, let's say you realize you need to change one of the points on the path. Just go to your direct selection tool, and you can just click once on one of the points there, and it actually lets you move the point, but more importantly, it actually gives you access to the directional handle, so you can reshape the paths as well. All right, so now let's finish it up here. What I'm going to do, I've got my phone layer, I've got the hand path layer. We'll go over to the layers palette, and I'm going to create a new blank layer. I'm going to fill that layer just any color here. I'm going to maybe pick a bluish color and just fill that layer with some color that's going to show. There we go. And the outline you're seeing here is actually the path. It is not any pixels yet. What we'll do is go to select the brush tool, set your foreground color to white, and just go to the top here. Maybe select a very small hard edge brush, 3 pixels, and go back to your paths palette. Click on one of the path layers here and just press the little button at the bottom, stroke path with brush. You see that? See how it strokes the overall path? It strokes it with whatever brush I selected over here in the toolbox. And you can do the same thing, but what we'll do here is go create another new layer, go back over to the paths palette, and stroke the phone with that brush. Now we can come over here in the layers palette, and you can just create a new layer, click off, and that'll actually hide the outlines there. And now I can come in here and just kind of clean it up, just get rid of any of the areas inside the phone to intersect with the hand.
He does that so easily and nicely.
Does.
And the beauty of it is that we did it all with paths. So 1, you can scale it as big or as large as you want, and 2, when you save your Photoshop file, it's always going to be there for you. So you can always come back and reshape or change the paths if you need to. So that finishes my 3-part tip. Now let's throw it over to Dave Cross for his tip.
All right, mine is not really a part 2 per se, although it is another tip on Vanishing Point, and it's an interesting way to take advantage of one of the cool ways that Vanishing Point works, specifically the way the clone stamp tool works within Vanishing Point. Because one of the problems with the regular clone stamp tool is when, say for example, I was going to try to clone this fellow out of here, it could be a challenge trying to get these lines to kind of line up properly. So here's what I'm going to do. I always like to duplicate my background layer just so I'm not messing anything up. And now we're going to go to Vanishing Point. And you may be asking yourself, why is he doing that? Because there's no perspective in this, and that's the whole point of Vanishing Point. Well,
Scott, why
this is what we're going to do.
I have no idea.
I knew someone was going to ask.
Why he's doing this.
Look what I'm going to do. I'm going to create an enormous grid that has no relationship whatsoever to any vanishing point, because of course there isn't one. It will be blue because it's a perfect.
Dave, that grid's not blue.
It was close though. There we go. Now here's the thing. The thing about this. The clone stamp tool works a little differently in here than it does in regular Photoshop. If I position it and then I Option or Alt click once, the difference is, look, I have a preview. Look, you don't get that in the regular clone stamp tool. So now I can line it up and say, that looks good right about there, and start cloning away and make things, well, not in that case. Now, this is the weird part. As you're doing this,
this is not weird at all.
This is not weird at all. I realize that's because I have heal on and I want it off. That's why that happened. So let me just show you that again, shall I? Option or Alt click once. My brush is also a little bit large. That's probably a little better right there. And then we can very easily clone. Now, as you go to move it, you get some kind of weirdness happening. Every time you Alt click or Option click again, then you see you get that little preview again. And basically what it means, instead of having to do any kind of guesswork, as you're doing it, it just makes a lot more sense now because you're getting that kind of little preview. So let's fix this side up because it looks kind of bad. Not kind of bad, it looks bad. So again, every time, see how it's so easy now because I'm just getting these things to line up and getting that little preview that you don't normally get in the regular clone stamp tool. So again, the key thing to remember there is a photo doesn't have to have any kind of angles or perspective to take advantage of Vanishing Point. We use it simply for a thing like that with the clone stamp tool. So there we have it. Now it's off to Mr. Larry Becker for all the latest news from NAP in the NAP Minute.
Thanks, guys. This week on the NAP Minute, well, have you ever been to a Photoshop World convention? If you haven't, you gotta go. But NAP members that go to Photoshop World have this lady to thank. I'm in the office of Julie Stevenson. She's our director. Say hi, Julie.
Hi, everybody.
Julie's our director of the conventions and trade shows and does a great job. And so anytime you ever go to one of those really big 3-day events, Julie's behind all the coordination there. And she's doing that right now. While she's doing that, let me tell you about something we talked a little bit about last week. Layers Magazine is also produced in-house here. And while it's not the official NAP publication, this is a sister publication that NAP members can get at almost 70% off the cover price. Now, since the merger of Adobe and Macromedia, there's been a lot of call for articles on Dreamweaver. We've got you covered. Not in this issue, but starting in the next issue, we're starting to cover Dreamweaver a lot more extensively. Another thing I want to let you know about is Lightroom and the Lightroom Learning Center. Now, the Photoshop guys are going to do a lot of stuff that's available to the general public, but just for NAP members, there are going to be some extra features on the NAP members website. We're going to have some extra clips for training, and we're also going to have a special interview just for NAP members. So swing by the NAP member website. If you're not a member, you ought to be, photoshopuser.com, and now it's time to go back to the Photoshop guys.
All right, welcome to our Q&A segment. Now, if you don't know what I'm referring to here, if you go to photoshoptv.com, you can actually write in comments on our blog site there, and sometimes we'll take your comments or questions and we'll answer them here. And sometimes we may not, so we can't get to all of them, but we try to.
Good chance, you know. They probably.
All right, so this week, Aaron writes in, I would like to know why I would insert metadata into my pictures in the first place. And really, essentially, the main reason why you do this is so you can put your copyright information into your picture. So you can put your name, your website information, any copyright info you want in there. And the other thing is you can also put keywords in there as well, so you can quickly find your photos based on different keywords that you give. So, thank you, Aaron, for the question. We are going to send you a Photoshop TV t-shirt.
All right, now it's the time you've been waiting for, the contest time. Ooh. And first we're going to look at last week's contest because we had some amazing prizes. And to show the main prize from our brand new sponsor, Epson Print Academy, here comes our Canadian contingent.
The country of Canada.
Representing Canada.
The whole country of Canada.
Nicole and Dave, both Canadians, both spent time in a Canadian prison. And here they are with the Epson Stylus Photo R2400, R2400, R2400. Some lucky person's going to win that. Along with, last week we also had a cooler, right? We had a cooler. Yep. We had the software that goes inside. It keeps your software cool and your hardware hot.
Oh, no.
All in here, the whole 9 yards.
Yes.
The software. There were some Molsons. I forget what it all was.
Yes.
But this lucky person's going to win it. And our winner this week, you have the name?
I have the name. We got to give the question first.
Oh,
and
give the question.
The question
Absolutely.
again was, how do you scroll your view when you're using the lasso or one of the lasso tools inside of Photoshop?
Yes, one of the lasso tools.
One of the lasso tools, and the answer is the spacebar key. And the winner is Nick Bristow from Bedfordshire, England.
All right.
Congratulations. We got across the pond.
Across the pond, our first UK winner. We have a lot of UK viewers, and thank you guys.
Congratulations, Nick.
And so we'll be shipping that. Now, Nick, we're going to be shipping it by the slowest means possible, so I would expect to have that by 2007.
Yes.
Okay, now we're going to bring Dave Cross in, and Dave Cross, come on, Dave.
Sorry, I was just loading a printer to my car. I mean, the shipping department.
So this week we're playing for another Adobe cooler, and you can't buy these in stores. You can't buy them anywhere because they're just
cool.
They're cool. They're cooler than the other prizes. Sorry. Dave, what's this week's prize? We know what the prize is.
This week's question is, where in Photoshop do you see the command that says show all channels? And you have to...
in Photoshop? Show all channels. Very good.
And you have to send your answer to...
Photoshop TV at photoshopuser.com.
How many times can they enter, Matt?
They can enter once.
Do we have a date?
You have to send that in by January 20th, 12 p.m. noon Eastern Standard Time.
And what country is the winner limited from?
Anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world. We'd love to have you on. All right, to wrap things up, we like to leave you with some projects to do until next Photoshop TV. So, Matt, what do you got?
I got one. The first one here is lunacore.com. And what you want to do, go there, check out articles, Photoshop tutorials, a lot of good stuff. Another one is go check out the NAP Lightroom Learning Center. Go to photoshopuser.com. Go view that if you haven't. If you have already, well, go view it again and participate in our forums.
Yep, there's lots of tutorials and things there. Lastly, I want to mention something off the blog. There is an Italian podcast. We got an email from Giuseppe Andretti. Hey, Giuseppe's got a podcast. Hey, go to the iTunes Music Store. Switch on the bottom to go to the Italian version of the iTunes Music Store. Search for Photoshop and you'll find it. It's called Photocast_it. Photocast it. It is the only Photoshop podcast in Italian. Thank you, Giuseppe, for sending that to us. There's 3 things for you to do this week until next week's show. We'll be back with more tips, more prizes, more fun. And of course, we'll be giving away the Photoshop World tickets starting 1 a week, every week next week. On behalf of myself, Scott Kelby, and Matt Kloskowski.
Thank you very much.
Who just rocked the house key, and Mr. Dave Krosky.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.